You might want to stop recording just until you get started again, so there's not like a whole lot of dead air space.
How's my sound, you guys?
It's good.
I feel like I've been yelling at people all morning because I've been talking so loud because my sound's been off. So I appreciate like the thumbs up. I'm talking normally right now. We'll get started in like 2 more minutes.
Looks like folks are joining us now.
Pasquale just finished.
Figured.
I'm going to send him a text and tell him that he's on the naughty list for going over.
It was a really good speech, though, I have to say.
Well, so then it's all worth it. Now I have a lot to live up to, Allison.
Zaza, it was really good, but it started late. So he probably didn't go over time. It just started late.
Yeah, yeah.
There were tech difficulties. People were being bumped out of the room. And
Got it.
Like 10 minutes, so.
Got it. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen here. And I'm usually pretty short-winded, so we'll probably get through quickly.
even had tech difficulties at the convention last night.
Oh, before Kamala Harris came out?
Yeah, and right in the
Yeah,
middle of Hillary.
yeah, yeah. Boy, the Obama speech last night, talk about a lesson in how to convey a political message well in the platform that they're in, right? Can't have the crowds and the cheers. There was an interesting op-ed in New York Times about how it was like one of your favorite bands playing an unplugged set and like the power of the unplugged, and that kind of captured it.
Yeah, great analogy.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're up to over 200 people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kirsten Zazo. I am the Chief Student Support Officer in the district. As I'm looking at my screen, I know most of you that are in right now, and I just want to welcome you all back. I know we've done a lot of welcoming back, but I haven't been able to welcome you back yet. So I am going to get started with a lot of the background about where we are and why we are where we are, and hopefully do some clarification. So some of the things that we're going to go over is just sort of grounding in the work, communicating what our goals are this year. I'm going to talk a little bit about SB 98, which is a lot of the why around why we have to do some of the things the way we have to do it. We're going to talk about some of the ideas we have about meeting the needs of our staff and students, details on schedules, special education, and then hopefully what's going to happen is that we're going to get to questions towards the end and more of sort of a dialogue. So what we're going to do as we go along is you're going to put questions in the chat. We're going to do our best to answer questions in the chat as much as possible. But at the end, we're going to take sort of the trending questions that we see, and we're going to do our best to answer those at the end of this sort of session together. And know that many of your questions are going to be answered as you go through the week. So I probably, and I'm going to be honest with you, I won't be able to answer all of your questions because we are in this place of that we are learning new things every day. We're having to be flexible, and we're all going to just do the best that we can. I was on with Judith last night, and I probably used some interesting language around how I kind of feel about this right now. But you know what? We have to laugh, we have to find joy where we have to find joy, and we have to depend on each other to keep some humor. So that's what I'm going to try to do as we go through this year together. So the bottom line is that, you know, teaching and learning is exactly that. It's about the student, it's about the teacher, and it's about the content. You are the core of what education is about. Whether we are virtual, whether we are in person, we need to keep that core at front and center. As I sit here this morning, both of my kids started school this morning. They're getting orientated to, you know, what their life is going to be like. And what they're excited about is the fact that they get to have teachers again, that they get to see classmates, and they get to get engaged. Our kids have had a summer and a spring where they actually are eager to learn new things. I was saying yesterday, it was crazy. So we put out messages to our juniors and seniors about that, you know, for this year, for seniors, we've dropped the credits for by 10 for graduation. And we said that seniors could take open periods. But what seniors wanted to do is they came back and they're saying, no, we want to take another elective course. They want to be engaged. They want to learn. And that's what we're going to do our best to do this year in the way that we have to do it. So I have been sticking with this analogy of VUCA, that it is volatile, we are uncertain, it is extremely complex and extremely ambiguous. And with that, I have been really sort of embracing these ideas. So how I've been sort of pushing through is I've been embracing reality. Like, this is the reality, and this is where we're at, but I'm not going to obsess on it. I am trying to do my best to know the facts and then trust and verify. And by trusting and verifying, it's exactly what we're asking our kids to do. Every time that we're having them look to see where they got their information, we have to dig in on that. And we have to do that for ourselves. When we started with COVID-19 in March, we thought that everything was spread through touching surfaces. And we were like really, intense on like, oh my gosh, it lives on the surface for 9 days. As more information has come out, we've learned more, and we need to keep that going as we go through this time. We have to avoid the knee-jerk reaction, and which means that sometimes all of our answers won't be answered at the same time. And we have to give it some time because we need to do the above, know the facts, and check the facts. This is my favorite, have an 80% plan, because right now, there is no way that we can have a 100% plan. It is impossible to do so. So we're sticking with the 80%, and we are kind of building the plane while we fly it, and we're all doing it together. We are doing our best to communicate. And I know that it's been hard because many of us want more communication. We are educators. We like to know what to expect. We like to be organized. We like to have our units put together. I mean, all of those pieces, that's why we are who we are. And this is really, really hard. So we're doing our best to communicate. That means top down, bottom up. We just have to talk with each other. We need to be disciplined, and we need to be innovative all at the same time. So we have to be focused, but we have to be thoughtful, and we have to change how we're delivering these new ideas and how we're engaging our students. It's a very, very different place to be in. We have to build trust and accountability, and we have to really, and I sometimes hate the assume best intentions because I think it gets overused, but I think during this time, it's gonna be so important that we know that we're all in this crazy space, and we just have to ask the questions before we assume the attention. And the last piece is that, I have to believe that there's gonna be a silver lining behind all of this. I think some of the silver linings that I saw from the June conference is that teachers were working together in ways that they haven't worked together in the past. Book clubs came out of the June conference that people were reading, and people were diving into new thoughts and ideas that they hadn't dove into before. So there are some positives that can come out. Also on, from a personal point of view, like I have, built a home gym, and I have my son and daughter who work out with me, which is just kind of strange. So there are some like really interesting things that could come out of this, and I think that we have to focus on some of those pieces. So as we go through, it's going to be complex, it's going to be complicated, there's going to be chaos, and it's not going to be always simple. So we want to prioritize student level goals. We are focused on teacher priority practices. We can't do it all this year, so we have to be focused in. We want to help build school leader practices. We really want to get to district goals and practices. We started strategic planning. We started looking at the graduate profile. And even though we're in the state, we can't lose focus on that. And then we really want to create the conditions for your learning, for adult learning, so that we can continue to just move through this together and be supportive of each other. So some of the teacher practices that we're really, really looking on are on the screen. I think that probably, I'm guessing because I wasn't able to be in with Pasquale, that he went over some of these practices, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So I do want to say that embedded in all of our goals this year is we want to be anti-racist educators, and we want to prioritize this. We want to strategically plan and be explicit with our African American students and to make sure that they are being successful. And we want to be reflective on our own teaching practices and our own assumptions. We need to start looking at ourselves and how we show up in different places. So we did, believe it or not, last year do a whole bunch of work with setting up a graduate profile. And we wanted to sort of think about, what do we want our kids leaving our system knowing? We want them to have core academic knowledge. We want them to be critical thinkers. We want them to be socially and emotionally aware, culturally intelligent. So in this state this year, how are we going to do that? And what is our practices going to look like to be able to do that? And those are questions. We don't have all the answers, but as we are being reflective educators, we're hoping that we can infuse some of this work into this year. So There's going to be lots of questions that come up as you go through the next few days. And some of it will be like, oh my gosh, why is this so crazy? Why are they making these procedures? Why is this process so intense? So here's some of the why, because I think that often we lay out a procedure and we don't explain why the why is behind it. So we have Senate Bill 98, which lays out a lot of pieces about how we do school this year. So within this, it talks about the provision of all students having access to technologies so that they can actually do this online distance learning. That the content has to be aligned to grade level standards, that we have to have our academic supports in place. We have to serve our special education students, serve our EL students, and we have to have daily live interaction with our students. What's interesting is that now we also have to document how we're doing all of that. So it's not just taking attendance when, you know, kids come and we sort of take, yep, okay, they showed up to their Zoom. We actually have to document how we're doing asynchronous and how we're doing synchronous learning. So attendance is going to be a different level than it's been before. We also have to look at engagement. Are kids engaged as they go through the week? How are we tracking the engagement? And of course, they let us know that they're going to be auditing us for all of those things. So we are going to have some new procedures, and it's not because we want to make everybody's life miserable, because trust me, I want to make things as simple for all of you as possible right now. But you know, some of these systems are going to have to change, and we're going to do our best to support you as we move through it. So, when we set off on this journey in June, we thought we were in different places, you know, every week. So first it was like, we're coming back. We're going to do everything we can to come back. And then it was like, oh, it doesn't look like we can come back. So now we're going this direction. So we did a lot of creating. We did a lot of collaborating. We did a lot of working together. And we ended up coming to the conclusion that we actually need two different programs. We have students, we have teachers who need to be in a remote and guaranteed all year long to be in that remote setting. And then we have the flexible model, which we're starting in distance, but you know, if it's safe to do so, we want to get back to in-person instruction, because the truth is we all know that our kids need that in person. They need the touch, they need the experience with others around them. And so when it's safe to do so, we want to get back to that place. So we had to create these two different programs. In doing so, we go back to this idea of complexity. Lots of complexity in doing so. And I'm going to take you through some of that complexity. So first, what is the flexible program and what is the fully distanced remote program? The biggest difference is in the flexible program, you as the teacher are delivering that instruction just like we would, well, not just like we would, but as we would in the classroom when we come back to in-person learning. In the remote program, the content is being delivered through Acellus, and the teacher is acting more like a case manager. So that's the biggest difference between the two. So we went through a whole process of asking our families if they would like to be in the remote or the flexible program. When it came down to it, we had a window of time that families had to apply into. And it was basically, they had to let us know if they were interested in the remote program by July 5th. After July 5th, if families contacted Student Services, we put them on a wait list. What I had to do is figure out those numbers. How many TK, how many 6th through 8th graders, how many 9th graders? And then I had to figure out what the FTE allocation would be for the remote program. Now remember, we can't just hire 36 new teachers. We don't have the budget to do that. So we had to figure out how to do this within the budget that we actually have. So what that meant, I'm just going to show an elementary example, and then I'm going to show a secondary example. So what that meant is that I had to look at the current enrollment of the school and what the current FTE allocation was. Then we had to take the remote enrollment out of each school, figure out what that FTE would be for the remote. We had to adjust the enrollment for each of the school and then figure out what would the FTE look like in the flexible model and see how much FTE we can pull out of the flexible model to make the remote model work. So I had to do this with every school site. You can see that even with doing combos, K1, 1, 2, 2, 3, I could only pull out 2 FTE to put into the remote program. To cover the students, they actually needed 3 FTE. So with doing this with every school site, we were able to pull out some FTE for the remote, some for the flexible, but it wasn't perfect. It doesn't match because it's impossible to match. Kids don't come in perfect sizes of class size. So with the secondary, you think about this on a completely different level, right? You have to think that the current enrollment is here, what the FTE allocation is, but you're not just teaching one subject. You have credentialing that comes into place. How many English sections? How many history sections? We pull out the remote enrollment, we adjust the FTE, and we see what we can pull out of the master schedule. So to cover the remote program with this many kids, that's 5.5 FTE. But I can only pull out 3.2 FTE from the master schedule. It's not a perfect match. So we've had to do this with every single school site, and it has created delays in all of the things that we want to know. It's delayed in our staffing. It's delayed our class configurations, our master scheduling, our communication to families, and to teaching assignments for teachers. And I know that everybody just wants to know, what am I teaching? What are my teaching lines? But by having 2 programs, we had to completely redo master schedules at the secondary school. And believe it or not, we had to do that in the last 2 days. So your site principals have been with me until 10:30, 11:30 at night over the last couple of days, trying to figure out how to get this done so that we can get you what you need to be able to be with kids. So when I say complex, that's kind of some of the complexities. When I say empathy, please know we're not trying to keep any secrets. We want everybody to know what they're teaching. It's just been a puzzle on a massive level that is taking us time to figure out. So on top of that, we also had to figure out how to run a flexible program and how to run a virtual program. What does intervention look like? What does special education look like in both of these programs? What does EL delivery look like? So we've had so many working groups going over the summer, and I know that so many people on this call have given up their time and energy to try to solve some of these problems that we have. How are we going to do these things? And I so appreciate the fact that there have been so many people that have given up their summers to do this work. So here's a sample of what a remote schedule might look like. So a teacher would be working with small groups. They have to do their attendance the same way anybody does in the flexible program. They are setting kids up individually on Acellus. They are doing check-ins with the family and with the individual parents to make sure parents know how to access the classes, how to monitor their students. They have to deliver the assessments. They have to answer questions and meet with small groups to be able to deliver some instruction, especially at the lower grades. We still have to teach reading, and Acellus won't do all of that work for us. So this gives you an idea of what that schedule would look like. The types of classes students in the remote program will take, Acellus goes from kindergarten through 12th grade. And they will be on a similar schedule that we will be on in the flexible program. So if they're a secondary student, they're going to take 3 classes in the first semester. They'll take 3 classes in the second semester. And if they're an elementary student, they're going to do their core content, just like they would be in the flexible program, but it will be on a CELIS instead of the teacher delivering the content. So through this year, we have to do some things that are aligned. And I know that, you know, part of teaching is having your own magic and doing your own amazing things in the classroom. And we still want that to happen. But for families to really be able to support kids, we need to be able to do some things in a similar fashion. So we are going to be using Google Classrooms this year to post our assignments and our due dates and communication with students on their work and giving feedback. We're going to use Zoom as our platform for delivering our live instruction. Parent Square is going to be used for communication with families and students, and Aries will be used to report on progress, posting grades, and completed assignments. That has to be done in a similar fashion. So a lot of the professional development that we're going to do this week is like, what are those things that we have to do in a common way? One of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've gotten from parents, and actually that I am a parent who have started 2 secondary students today at 8:30 in the morning, is that how am I going to manage to help you as the teacher, help them as students keep up on their learning if I don't know what's actually happening? And so we're going to be training parents on these platforms and how to keep up with their students so that they can support their students at home, so that they can support you as a teacher. Some of the things that we're going to do through the Learning Conference are required, which is red, or choice, which is green. So that's where you're gonna get a lot of the information on what those expectations are across the district. All right, schedules. Everybody has been dying to understand the schedule that is coming. So I've made this color key to sort of help us kind of get through. Anything that is in that light green is morning meetings, closing meetings, class check-ins, or homeroom as we call it. We have synchronous instruction, which is live in-person instruction, asynchronous student time, which means that they are working on their own, small group instruction, and then we have family communication, additional student support, and then breaks and lunch. I'm not going to take us through the elementary. They are in this PowerPoint. I'm going to go straight to secondary. Okay, here we go. Secondary. We have synchronous instruction. Again, we are doing 2 semesters, 1 semester, 3 classes, another semester, an additional 3 classes. It's been interesting master scheduling this, by the way. Good time. So as a teacher in secondary, you teach 5 classes. So you're going to have 1 semester where you're teaching 3 classes and another semester where you're only teaching 2 classes. 8:45 to 9:40, that's period 1, synchronous learning. Students are still expected to do asynchronous student time when they're not synchronous learning. So they're expected to still do period 1 work during this time. This is a time for you as a teacher to check in with students, to maybe do some individual contact, to post your videos, to make sure that the stuff that you need to do is done for students to be able to access that asynchronous work. 9:40 to 10:30, we have small group check-ins. Then we have a break. So when I say 9:40 to 10:30, obviously you're not going to use possibly this whole time for small group, but that's when you can be running some of your small group time when others are doing their asynchronous work. Period 2, same format, lunch. Period 3, same format. And then we go into, on Mondays, planning time. On Tuesdays, family communication and additional student support. So what we're explaining to families is that on Tuesday, this time is a time that they can be reaching out to you, or that you're going to be using this time to reach out to them. Now let me explain period 7. Period 7, we talked about, and we worked with teachers in the working groups about that there are some classes that have to just continue through the whole year. Academic strategies for special education is one of those classes. We're supposed to be supporting students throughout all of their areas and content, We can't just do that for one semester. We have to do it through the entire year. Communication in the real world is another class, special education. We have to have that through the whole entire year. There are EL classes, again, where we have support, leadership. We have to be able to make ASB decisions about how we're spending money. Your book isn't just a semester, it goes across a full year. So some teachers will be teaching this 7th period. What that means is that if you're teaching a 7th period class, that you're only doing 2 classes here and then 1 class on this side if you have that 7th period. So again, 5 classes, 1, 2, possibly 3, 4, and then this is your 5th class.
Hey,
For
Kirsten,
moderate, yeah.
can we take a pause actually and go back? We do have some questions specific to people that I'm having trouble keeping up with in the chat. And I think most people would like to know or have more of a dialogue about the answers to them.
Absolutely.
So the first question is, can we break up the synchronous and asynchronous time, for example, with small groups?
Absolutely. So notice that these are the same times, 9:40 to 10:30, 9:40 to 10:30. So during this time, teachers can be doing small groups and students can be doing asynchronous. So you can break it up within that 9:40 to 10:30, however you wish to break it up.
And then can folks bring back students together to digest the asynchronous work? So for example, at that 11:40 to 12:30 time, maybe come back at 12:20 to just digest the work that kids have been doing?
Absolutely. So remember, it's kind of like in a classroom, and this is how I've been thinking about it. You're going to have whole group time with your students, and you might even in that whole group time when everyone's doing synchronous learning, be putting them into breakout rooms with specific things that they're talking about in groups. And then you're going to send them off. They come back together. You're going to send them off into asynchronous, but you're going to say, Gabe, Lindsay, Allison, Jody, you guys are going to stay with me in a small group and we're going to do some pieces together. Everybody else, you have your assignment in Google Classroom, you know what you're doing. Everybody, we're gonna come back together at 10:20 to do a closeout today. That's up to you. You are the teacher. You're gonna decide on what that looks like during your period of 8:45 to 10:30. So the big thing is that kids are expected to be in school during this time. They're expected to be in school from 8:45 until 2:55 in the afternoon. They're expected to be there. If you need to meet with them in small groups, you're going to let them know. If you're going to close out your class, you're going to let them know.
Awesome. And then the next question is that small group time required? So is running small groups required?
So running small groups is required. How you do that, it's up to you, right? So, and it doesn't have to be for this full 9:40 to 10:30 time, but we do expect that there's going to be small groups that you're going to have to run. You might actually have to do one-on-one check-ins during that time. You might have to, do a small group time that maybe isn't even live or synchronous, but where you're doing chatting with a group. But the idea is that there is time in which you are working with students during that 9:40 to 10:30 time.
Awesome. And then I think we've answered a lot of the questions in the chat with that first question about the flexibility within the synchronous and asynchronous time. The next question that keeps popping up is about the difference between asynchronous time and homework.
Yes. So we have a homework policy that we will continue to stick with, but I want everybody to be super, super thoughtful about homework this year. So I know that this has come up. We have a AP working group that's going on right now, and that has been trying to sort of define what those expectations are. The asynchronous time, I think what's going to be important for kids and families is to just know what's expected of them to do as an assignment. So I would not be assigning something that's just specific for homework if it were me, because it's all asynchronous. It's just the bottom line of what is expected of the student to do and to turn in is really what I would get to. So, I mean, it's a tough answer. You can assign homework, but you also have to know that this is going to be a lot for kids and families to juggle. So just being clear on what's assigned, what's expected is going to be really important.
Awesome. I think we should go into the SPED, the special education schedule. I'm going to save the chat, everybody, and we'll get other answers to more specific questions that maybe weren't trending as frequently soon.
And I also just have to let people know that we're going to share this with principals too, so that they know what to expect with answering questions when we go into staff meeting time as well. Okay, for moderate to severe, it's a very tough group to be doing distance learning with. And so we're trying to be as thoughtful as possible with how we're communicating to our families and what the expectations are. So this is the basic idea of what a moderate to severe flexible schedule is going to look like. We have morning meeting where we set the day for all of our students and families. And then we really are doing small group instruction with our students. We are giving them time for asynchronous assignments that are really choice within there, doing lots of family communication and support, because families are going to have to do a different level of coaching and support for our moderate to severe students. We've had so many working groups going this summer that I've talked about. We had 3 working groups for special education, mild, moderate, secondary, mild, moderate, elementary, and then our moderate to severe working group. We have been working hard on curriculum, how we're going to take IEPs and change them to IEP aligned plans, provide supports and schedules, and what the role of our paraprofessionals are in this work. So I want to explain a little bit about IEP aligned plans. What this means is that the IEP is the offer of FAPE. It is a legal document that is used to describe what supports a student gets through their individualized educational plan. That document is only for when we are in person regular instruction. We have to take pieces of that document and make an IEP aligned plan to what their IEP was. Obviously, what's in their IEP when it talks about SAI, specialized academic instruction, the minutes that are in that plan don't translate to the minutes that we are doing instruction this year. So we have to align the services to what actually is possible this year. So families who say, I have an IEP, they do have an IEP, and that's the document for when they come back to on-campus, all-day instruction. Until then, they have their IEP aligned plan, which in SB 98, they call an emergency plan, which we didn't necessarily want to do. So we called it the IEP aligned plan that our mild to moderate teachers are creating with special education support for each of our students. So as a general education teacher, you're going to receive the IEP aligned plan for students that are in your classes and know what their supports look like. Last piece is that you may not control all the events that happen to you, but you can decide not to be reduced by them. Maya Angelou was amazing and wonderful, and I rely on her quotes to help me get through the days at some times. So we're going to go into some trending questions, and hopefully I'm going to be able to answer them, and I may not, but I'm going to do my best. And then we're going to save the chat. We're going to give it to your principals so that they also know what to expect with questions, and hopefully be able to give you some clarification as well. Lindsay.
All right, so some trending questions about the 7th period. Can you talk a little bit about why it is required, what kind of courses are going to be happening during that 7th period, and how it'll work to have it over the 2 semesters?
Yep. All right, so the 7th period, the classes that are going to be running in 7th period are strategies class, academic strategies, communication in the real world, ELD, leadership, and yearbook. Also over here. The synchronous time for those classes are 3 o'clock to 3:30. Many of these classes don't require a whole lot of asynchronous work to be done. A lot of it just has to be in-person time spending with students. So that's why it's a half an hour every day, 4 days a week. If a teacher teaches a 7th period throughout the school year, they will only have 4 other classes that they teach. When master scheduling, we are doing our best to keep 2 classes in first semester and then 7th period, 2 classes in second semester, and then 7th period. These are the only classes that are going to be running in the 7th period.
Great, and just highlighting the ELD class as well there.
Yep, our EL classes will be running across, unless it's ELD beginning, because ELD beginning is actually 2 classes. That will be a full first semester class and a full second semester class.
Great. And can you speak a little bit to, there's a conversation in the chat about Zoom versus synchronous time. Is Zoom synchronous time? Do we mean that other things could be happening with students synchronously, or are we explicitly talking about live instruction via Zoom?
We are talking about live instruction via Zoom during synchronous time.
Great. And then the last question is, if we want to, can we split our students into A/B groups for this time, for any time in the schedule?
So yes, the synchronous instruction, so what families and what we've communicated through the MOU is that it's 55 minutes a period, right? So we have to give, just like any time, we have to have a bell schedule. Students need to know when to sign on and come to first period. So I've been thinking about this a lot because I've been on Zoom. I've been delivering a lot of meetings and working groups. And what I often do in my synchronous time with my meetings is that I do an intro and then I break people into breakout rooms. So I might break out my A group and I might break out my B group. I'll tell my A group, here are the instructions that I want you discussing while you are in your breakout room. I'll put that into the chat while I'm working with my B group, and then I switch it. That's still considered synchronous instruction. The kids are all on Zoom. They're all working together. You can switch between the groups in order to give more detailed instruction. Hope that helps.
Great. I know there's some specific questions in the chat, but I'm really just looking for trends, and we are at 10:30. So I think we're going to cut it there because more of these questions are specific, and we will save the chat and answer those specific questions at a later date.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I truly appreciate you being on. I know that in some ways I probably delivered information that made it more confusing. I hope that I've done some clarification as much as possible. And I'm just going to sort of back it up back to how I'm getting through, which is these pieces right here. I'm embracing reality. I'm trying to know the facts, even though it's really hard to figure it out sometimes. I'm trying to not make any quick decisions. I'm trying to develop my 80% plan and know that I'm going to try it and I'm going to have to shift it. It's never going to be 100%. Stay inside the world that I can control. Communicate as much as possible. Be innovative and disciplined. And I'm trying to build trust and accountability and remember that there's always a silver lining. I hope that you can do this too and know that we are here to support you. I am here to support you and will do my best to do that throughout the year. I hope that you can just embrace the fact that our kids are so excited to see you. They're so excited to be learning again. And you know what? They're flexible and they're willing to roll with what they're going to roll with. And so we have to know that as well. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and look forward to checking in more as we go through the learning conference together. Happy Monday, or well, my Monday, Thursday, whatever it is. Bye, everybody.